So, thank you. I didn't want you guys to be like, what is going on? Bathroom break.
You were double muted. I had to unmute you here too.
So I was very safe, is what I hear. Hello, welcome. I heard you were coming on in, so we waited just for you. Okay, I see name tags for most of you, so which helps. So we got Andrea, Tama, right?
Yes.
Irma,
Rita.
Rita, Joe, Jim. You're testing my glasses. And Mary. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Morgan Adams. I'm with the Penn Memory Center. We are an Alzheimer's disease research center, so we provide clinical care and research related to the disease. I won't talk too much about it because I'm going to talk about it in a second in our slide deck, so I don't want to spoil the excitement. But I'm super excited to be here with you all today to present. I am the Assistant Outreach Manager at the Penn Memory Center. I've been there for 3 years. Before starting at the Penn Memory Center, I got my master's degree in interdisciplinary health science from Drexel University. It's just a fancy way to say biomedical science. And then previously before that, I worked for a nonprofit organization in Atlanta, Georgia. Are you from Atlanta?
Yes.
Awesome.
61 years.
Yes, I love that because I also went to college in Atlanta. I graduated from Spelman College with a degree in chemistry. So I've always had a passion for health education, particularly talking about healthcare disparities and healthcare accessibility. So it's really all about what I do. I work with community organizations to do brain health education and even facilitate recruitment into our clinical research trials as well. I have a lot of things that I'm going to talk to you about today. We'll have Q&A, of course, at the end. We're a small group, so I don't mind if you raise your hand and you have some questions during the presentation. I might tell you, hold off on your question because I know I'm going to answer it in a second with some slides as well. I also tend to talk a little fast. I get very excited. I love what I do in giving these presentations. So please feel free to raise your hand and be like, Morgan, I don't know what you're saying because you're talking way too fast, and I will absolutely slow down. Sound good?
Good.
Beautiful. And then the last thing is at the end, I do have some handouts up front, just information on healthy aging, our center, things like that. Please help yourself to whatever feels relevant to you. All right?
Andrea, should I close the door? Do you want to, or do you care?
I don't care. Does it make any difference at all?
To what?
About closing the door.
Closing the door?
It won't, people can come in that door
Okay.
quietly.
Yeah, that's
if
totally
they're-
fine. I won't spend too much time on this slide because my focus will actually be on the next slide. This is Karen and Vivian Wheeler. Karen was a caregiver for her mother, Vivian, who had Alzheimer's disease. They were Penn Memory Center patients and research participants. Karen is actually still very actively involved in the work that we do at the Memory Center. After Karen's caregiving journey concluded with the passing of her mother, she wrote a book about her journey. And one of the things that she said in the book was, knowledge is power. For me, it is important to share all that I've learned and continue to learn about Alzheimer's disease with others who are caring for a loved one. Karen talked a lot about the journey that she went through, right? So the financial journey and burden, the social implications of caring for her mother, and even what it was like to exist after her mother passed, right? Because just because your loved one may have passed from Alzheimer's disease-related dementia, it doesn't mean that your journey has ended. With that being said, I always start my presentations by sharing this photo. This is my family photo. In it, you will find me sitting in the lap of my great aunt Opal Williams. Above her is my grandmother, and next to my grandmother in the red is my mother. My grandmother and my great aunt were 2 of 12 children. My grandma was the youngest and is currently the only surviving of the 12 children. My family, well, I grew up in Kansas City. My family is actually from California, all throughout Sacramento, Los Angeles, San Diego. You can kind of find my family everywhere. At the time, my grandmother was living in Kansas City with my family. And she would call her sister, who was still living in Los Angeles, to check in every now and again. And she started to notice when she would call, there was this repetition of conversations. It was the same questions, it was the same answers, it was the same stories, right? In a way that wasn't like she was remembering things, but forgetting things. It's quite clear. You fast forward through a lot of steps, right? And we received an Alzheimer's disease diagnosis for my great aunt. So my mother and my grandmother moved my great aunt from Los Angeles all the way out to Kansas City, where they served as her primary caregivers. I don't remember too much about my great aunt. It's funny, when I was just home for Christmas and I heard a lot of family stories about my great aunt. She was quite the hoot, I must say. Crazy woman that she was, but a delight. But for me, what I remembered was mostly that she asked me a lot of the same questions, right? She would only drink Ensure because she was constantly, she had a lot of paranoia about her food and always losing her driver's license and the keys to the house. I'm pretty sure the DMV knew my grandmother and my great aunt by the time she passed, every time she walked in, right? But one thing my grandmother always said is that throughout the decline of her memory and thinking, one of the things that she always seemed to hold on to was my name. She seemed to always remember who I was. And I share this story with you all to really, my story as well as Karen's story, to really normalize the experience of cognitive impairment, memory loss, Alzheimer's disease. It's incredibly prevalent within our communities, and it's really important that we talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the more agency we have over what we do and how we care for ourselves. So that being said, we have a lot on our agenda today. We'll talk about the Penn Memory Center. We'll talk about what healthy brain aging actually is, different types of cognitive impairment, why does all this matter, healthy brain aging tips, some brain aging research, and some thoughts and questions, and we'll enjoy the music of construction right behind us. Sound good? Beautiful. So what is the Penn Memory Center? I mentioned it before. We are an Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, which is a big mouthful to really just say we provide clinical care and research services related to the disease. You don't have to have the disease to get involved in the work that we do, because we really are what I like to think of as a 360 wraparound service. So we provide clinical care, of course, but we also have research services available, and we have a really robust social work team that works with patients and families to provide whatever services are needed and help navigate the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. This is done through a variety of ways, but we offer counseling services to patients and families. We provide education about their diagnoses, emotional support, suggestion and referrals to different resources around the Philadelphia area. And then we have a host of services that we offer: memory cafes, which are events for individuals with cognitive impairment and their families. We host events for our research participants, like celebrations and things of that nature. And so you get priority access to those programs if you're a member of the Penn Memory Center as a patient or research participant. So jumping right on in, what is healthy brain aging? Because that's really what we're here to talk about today. Healthy brain aging, the World Health Organization defines it as the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being into older age. When I read that, I feel like it's kind of a mouthful, so we're going to break it down. When you guys see functional ability, developing and maintaining the functional ability, what comes to mind? What are we trying to maintain? Feel free, shout it out, raise your hand. Yeah. You half raised your hand, so I'm calling on you, Miss Irma.
You're able to do things for living.
Yeah.
Get up and comb your hair.
Absolutely. Getting up and combing your hair. That's a beautiful one. Anything else? Maintaining your functional ability. What else do you want to be able to maintain?
Keeping yourself clean.
Keeping yourself clean. Yes. Bathing. Absolutely.
Memory.
Your memory and thinking, of course. Yeah. Anything else?
Being able to reason.
Being able to reason. Yeah. Problem solve. Absolutely. These are all components of what we say in the healthcare system as maintaining the ability for activities of daily living, right? You want to be able to manage your household. You want to be able to bathe, clean, manage your finances, right? And as we age, when we talk about aging healthily, we want to maintain that process for as long as possible. But what we know about the aging process is that it's not linear. We don't all age the same way, and sometimes being able to maintain those things isn't possible for an individual. So when we talk about aging, there's actually 3 ways that we could define age. The first is chronological age, which is the one that we're all most familiar with. It's your name, not your name, it's your age in terms of a number based off of when you were born, right? So I am 30 years old, and that's chronological age. But we also have biological age, which is what a lot of scientists, physicians say is the most accurate way to define one's age, right? Aging happens at a biological level. On our cells, there's something called our chromosomes, and on our chromosomes, there's something called the telomeres, right? And the telomeres shorten over time. The rate at which this shortens varies from person to person. Your lifestyle factors impact how fast you age. So you might have an individual who's 6 years old, but they experience a lot of adversity throughout their life. Lots of stress, limited access to fruits and vegetables. They weren't super active throughout their lifetime. So biologically, they're actually the age of someone who's 70 years old, right? But you might have an individual who lived a very active lifestyle, had access to fruits and vegetables, saw their primary care doctor on a consistent basis. So biologically, they are actually 50 years old, right? Aging isn't linear. It varies from person to person, and your life experiences play a huge role in that. But then we also have psychological age, which I think is the most fun of the 3. Psychological age is all about how you feel, how you carry yourself throughout the world, right? So there's a saying that says it's not about how old you are, but how you are old, right? So that individual who has turned 25 for the last 30 years, maybe they really are 25, you know? It's all about how you feel. So age-related changes, right? Our bodies are naturally going to change, all of us, including me. So you're going to see changes in your sleep, lungs, hair, skin, nails, teeth, taste. I have a nephew that I took to get ice cream. This was a couple years ago at this point. His name's Levi. And at the time, he was probably like 4. And naturally, at Baskin-Robbins, he gravitated to that ice cream that was really bright pink and blue. It was the cotton candy flavor ice cream. I remembered, as you see where this is going. I remembered as a kid, I really loved cotton candy ice cream. So being the fantastic aunt that I was, before I gave him his ice cream, I took a bite. It was disgusting. It was the worst thing. It was so sweet. I was like, ew, take this. I don't know why you want this, right? But as a kid, I really loved it, right? So our taste buds are going to change. Metabolism, digestion, mood, cardiovascular system, bones, muscles, joints, your bladder and urinary tract, sexual function, your social network, which people don't often think about, right? The social makeup of the people around you is going to change naturally as you age. And then, of course, what we're here to talk about is cognition. Our cognition is naturally going to change as we age. We don't think as fast as we used to. We don't think in the same way that we used to, right? And so some of these changes are normal, a normal part of aging. But sometimes these changes are something that might be indicative of things like Alzheimer's disease, dementia, right? Some form of cognitive impairment. So, Morgan, how do I know if my changes in cognition are related to cognitive impairment? Well, there are 3 types of cognitive impairment that we're going to talk about today. And these are things that are abnormal signs of aging, not normal changes in your cognition that you're going to see. So the first one is mild cognitive impairment. This is a stage that happens between the normal decline that traditionally happens, right, and dementia. This falls in between, in the middle of the 2. This decline This decline happens in individuals, and when it does, it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll develop dementia. Some people develop MCI and they'll stay within this range of impairment throughout their life. Individuals with MCI might just need a little extra support navigating their day-to-day activities. Remember, we talked about functional ability. They might need a couple reminders for appointments, right? They might need a little assistance navigating complex tasks or tasks that have multiple steps. But for the most part, they're able to function and live alone on a day-to-day basis. One thing I found interesting about mild cognitive impairment is individuals that have this, their field of vision actually narrows. So someone might come to you and say, I can't find my shoes. I've been looking everywhere. I can't find my shoes. And you walk in the room and you're like, they're right there. But their field of vision naturally narrows with mild cognitive impairment. So they actually couldn't see that thing, right? Where before they might have been able to see that. There are lots of changes that can occur that you wouldn't think of that are a part of changes in cognition, which is why it's important to have a relationship with your primary care doctor. So some signs of MCI, forgetting recent conversations, right? Forgetting appointments or events. These are things that once upon a time were really easy for you to recall, but now you have a little bit more challenge in doing these things. You might have some difficulties making sound decisions. I mentioned navigating complex tasks or things with multiple steps, and then changes in your visual perception. So dementia, moving up the ladder, right? Dementia, how many of us have heard of dementia? Yeah, probably all of us. We think, exactly, we think about it a lot too. Oftentimes, what we find in older adults and people that are aging, which is really all of us, but when you have older adults and they start seeing changes in their memory, the first thing they think of is, oh my goodness, is it dementia, right? But there are a lot of things that can cause changes in your cognition. Anxiety, depression, medication, right? There are many, many things, but also it could be dementia. So dementia is really just this broad term that we use to describe the loss of cognitive function, thinking, remembering, reasoning skills that interfere with your ability to function on a day-to-day basis. Remember, we're talking about maintaining your functional ability. An individual that has dementia is impaired to the level of it's really hard to navigate those day-to-day tasks, right? Managing your household, bathing, cleaning yourself, taking care of things, your finances, your medications becomes really difficult, as opposed to someone with mild cognitive impairment could navigate those things a little bit more. What people don't realize is dementia is this broad term that we use, but there are different types of dementia. So Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia that we'll see in the United States and in the world, but there are other types of dementia. You might know someone who had a stroke, and after their stroke, their memory and thinking skills were altered, right? And that's vascular dementia. But you also might know someone that has Lewy body dementia or frontotemporal dementia. Maybe someone with Parkinson's disease. You might see that they have dementia, right? Dementia arises as a symptom of a lot of other diseases. I think about colds, right? When you have a cold, you might sneeze, you might cough, have a runny nose, right? These are all the symptoms of your disease, but overall, you have a cold. Overall, you might have Alzheimer's disease, and there are all these symptoms that are arising as a result. Dementia is one of those symptoms. And so if you take nothing away from today, I want you to know that dementia is a symptom of some other larger disease. Any questions about that? No?
So there's not something called dementia?
You have there is dementia. You have, like, dementia is a thing. Someone might have dementia, but dementia is a result of some larger thing, right? It's not that you just have dementia. Dementia is caused by something else. I didn't repeat Andrea's question, but she asked, so there's nothing called just dementia.
So I know that Alzheimer's has specific neurological correlates.
Yeah.
But how symptomatically is it differentiated from Lewy body and frontotemporal dementia?
So the way that it arises is different. The impairments that you see on the body is different. So the breakdown. So with Alzheimer's disease, what we find is there is the buildup of two proteins in the brain. It's called tau tangles and amyloid plaques. These build up in different spots in the brain, and where these proteins are building up in the brain is different from Lewy body disease and frontotemporal disease. So now we often use CAT scans, MRIs to see where is the buildup happening, and we also use blood work to understand what sort of proteins are in the blood to differentiate between Lewy body disease, frontotemporal disease. Really, the main overlap that you see is the dementia symptoms, but the other symptoms as far as stability, walking, mood changes can vary from different types of diseases. And so we have some information up here about like mood changes that you'll see, but you don't always see that in some of the other diseases that arise. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, is Lewy body always associated with Parkinson's?
I don't think so, but I need to double check that and get back to you because I'm actually not sure.
My husband had Lewy body's
Mhm.
disease, and I want, what did I know about it? I knew, all I knew was how I saw him responding to
Yeah.
things. And it was very, very frustrating,
Mhm.
extremely frustrating to him.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if you would say some more about how it is different from Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Honestly, I can't break down too much the difference from what we see in Lewy body disease and Alzheimer's disease because our center specializes in Alzheimer's disease. So a lot of my work is in that field. We do have a center that focuses more on Lewy body disease and frontotemporal disease. And I can connect you with them and their outreach team if you're curious, and they can break it down a lot more. But we do often see in the individuals that have cognitive impairment, the frustration, right? Because you have to think about your brain is the thing that you've had your entire life. And there are changes that are happening and you might not understand them. And so it's frustrating to know that once upon a time you were able to do this thing and now you're having trouble, right? And so coming to terms with that can be challenging. Andrea, then Joe. Jim, sorry. I'm telling you, these glasses are really testing me.
Is there any other diagnoses that of dementia that are different from Alzheimer's, vascular, Lewy body, or frontal temporal?
Yes, I did not list all of them here, but there are a number of diseases where dementia can arise as a symptom, and that's why we bring attention to this, right? Because
Okay.
most people don't know. When they hear dementia, they just think Alzheimer's disease. They don't think about vascular, Lewy body, frontotemporal. These are just some of the leading causes of dementia, but there are others, like Parkinson's, which I didn't list,
Yeah.
up here. Parkinson's is one of them as well. The point is dementia is this broad idea.
Yeah.
It's this broad concept that we use to talk about the change in memory and thinking skills that we see.
Okay.
Jim?
You mentioned that Lewy body and frontal temporal was plaque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Is that
No, Alzheimer's.
That's with Alzheimer's disease.
Alzheimer's
Mhm,
disease?
yes.
And Lewy body and frontal temporal have other,
Yes. Yes. So Lewy body and frontotemporal, they attack the brain in different places and in different ways, right?
okay.
But
thanks.
dementia is still a symptom that arises in these cases.
I understand, yeah.
Same with vascular dementia, right? The issue here is that there has been a lack of blood flow in a particular area in the brain, which results in impaired memory and thinking skills, right? And so all of these things attack the brain in different ways, but can all result in having dementia.
Thank you.
Do these various different types of dementia develop at different rates?
Yes, yeah.
Or are
They
they
do.
individualized as well?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, like, you have two people that are, that have Lewy body.
Mhm.
Would they both be progressing
At the
or
same rate?
regressing at the same rate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't talk about Lewy body, but I will talk about just generally, all of them progress at different rates, right? But again, because the way the brain is being, we'll say, attacked, for lack of a better word, it's happening in different ways. Even in Alzheimer's disease, you have individuals who are developing Alzheimer's disease in their 40s, but you also may have an individual who they don't start showing signs of Alzheimer's disease until their 70s, right? It varies from person to person. And lifestyle factors has a lot to do with it, but there's also a lot that we don't know. And so we're trying, there are research studies specifically geared towards understanding why people experience these diseases at different rates.
Is there an association between the age of development of Alzheimer's and the rate at which it progresses?
The age, to my knowledge, no, but that's also another one. I would imagine there's probably a research study looking specifically at that one. But I would say no, that your age doesn't necessarily dictate how fast the disease will progress. And I'm thinking I'm basing that off of patients that I've known. It varies. There's so many factors that impact the rate at which the disease will develop. Any other questions before we move on? Good questions. So signs of dementia that you might see. Of course, memory loss. It's the one that we are all the most familiar with, but of course, difficulty planning or problem solving. Those complex tasks that involve multiple steps. Confusion regarding the time or place. So today is a winter day. We're all dressed pretty appropriately. But someone might wake up and think it is a summer day and they're headed to the beach, right? And so they're really disoriented about where they are, time and place. Difficulties with speaking and writing, that might be with the physical aspect to it, or word finding, keeping up with a conversation and remaining present, following along with what's going on. Now, that being said, Alzheimer's disease, right? So we're kind of like advancing up in, we'll say, severity, for lack of a better term. Alzheimer's disease is a very specific neurodegenerative disease. It is an irreversible progressive brain disease that causes the deterioration of memory and thinking skills over time. There are a variety of risk factors involved in the development of the disease. The number one risk factor of development of Alzheimer's disease is age. But also your family history and genetics play a role. There are genes that we know that are related to the development of the disease, that if you have it, you're more likely to develop the disease. Currently, there's no treatment available that stops the progression of the disease, but we've had quite a few successes over the past few years. And there are drugs available that slow the progression of the disease, but do not completely stop it. And the thing about this is our country is getting older. We're finding an increased number of older adults in our society, which is great. However, we do know that that increases the likelihood of the development of the disease. So we're seeing more and higher rates of Alzheimer's disease develop. Yes.
This may be premature, but I wanted to ask about infusions as a, it's not a cure, but a process that, is this a time to talk about that, or do you want to
I mean,
address
kind
that?
of, we'll, a little bit at the end. We talk about clinical research. So there are some infusions available that we have with some of the drugs that have been recently approved for Alzheimer's disease treatment. So one of them using lecanemab, there are lecanemab infusions that patients can get that are used in a clinical research form, studying the development of the disease and seeing if the infusions of this medication can prevent the development of the disease later on. But there are also infusions available for patients that we're trying to slow the progression of the disease.
Is that Leqembi? Is that one
Yeah,
of them?
Leqembi, lecanemab.
Leqembi,
Yes, yeah. So they're both the same thing. And there's a second one called donanemab, which works in a similar fashion. And that one received approval after Leqembi did. Yeah. Any other questions?
Well,
Yep.
If these diseases are irreversible,
Mm-hmm.
what is the benefit of taking these particular infusions?
Yeah. So some individuals, patients, families, they might want to delay, the getting to the point of needing full support and care, right? They may want more time with their families, their loved ones, the world, right? And so they would like to participate in these studies. It also might be for individuals, if they know they have this disease, they want to participate in clinical research, not for their own benefit, but to help others around them, to help people in the future. Because the more that we study these diseases and these treatments, the more we understand them, right? And so for the individual, they might not see the ultimate benefit in their participation, but it helps them a little bit, and it helps the society at large.
Who wouldn't want to do that?
It depends. I mean, it's a personal choice, truly. Some people have a lot of hesitancy in participating in clinical research, and so they would rather not. And some people want to. It really is such a personal choice to.
And there
to
are
make.
side effects.
Yes,
right?
and there are side effects. It's not like doing these things, you experience no other changes. There are side effects that can come along with some of these drugs. So, like I mentioned before, if you take nothing away from this presentation, I want you to know that Alzheimer's is a disease. It is a very specific neurodegenerative disease where dementia is a symptom that arises as a result of some disease, Alzheimer's being one of them. So how do I sort out, are the changes in my brain and that are happening related to just my age and aging, or is this something that might be more indicative of Alzheimer's disease related dementia? Typical age-related changes, missing a monthly payment from time to time, right? A few months back, I thought I paid my credit card bill. Actually, I knew I paid my credit card bill. And they were saying I didn't. I called the company. I was like, I promise you, I paid it. I went and checked my bank statement. I didn't pay it. I thought I did, but I didn't. But that doesn't happen every month, right? Forgetting which day it is, but later remembering. I did it earlier. I think you guys may have been in here when I did it, but I thought, I was like, what day is it? Wednesday, Thursday? Oh, it's Tuesday, right? But I was able to recall what day it was. Sometimes forgetting which word to use. I've definitely done that in this presentation, right? Typical part of aging. And losing things from time to time, but being able to retrace your steps to find them. My great aunt was a mastermind when it came to losing things / hiding things that we were never able to find. Signs that might be indicative of dementia. An inability to manage a budget, right? We're talking bills are piling up. We're missing lots and lots of payments. Losing track of the date or season, we talked about that one earlier as well. Getting ready and thinking it's a summer day, but we're in the middle of winter, fallish weather. Difficulty having a conversation or maintaining that conversation, getting lost in it, and then misplacing things and being unable to retrace your steps to find them. I had a presentation that I gave, this was a couple years back, and at the end, a woman came up to me. She was 93, and she said, I loved your presentation, Morgan, thank you so much, but I wanted to talk to you because I have some concerns. I've been walking into rooms and forgetting why I'm there. And I asked her, are there any other concerns? And she was like, no, that's really the main one. And I was like, well, I'm 27 and I do that. So if you're doing that at 93, I think you're in good shape. Yes, how many of you have thought that when you're like walking to a room and you're like, oh, here it is, I'm losing it, right? Good news for you, you likely are not. It's something called the doorway effect. When you walk into a new room, your brain actually resets to take in its new surroundings. And so sometimes we forget why we're in there. But if you turn around and you walk back to where you were, and then it's like, oh, I remember, right? So yeah, walking into a room does not necessarily guarantee that you are developing dementia. But if you have a culmination of these things, maybe we talk to our primary care provider. So what our general rule of thumb is at the Memory Center is if your memory is impacting the management of your money, the management of your medication, your use of technology, which I will go back to, and the use of transportation. If it's impacting any of those 4 areas to the point that we're not able to function, our functional ability on a day-to-day basis, that is a great time to reach out to our primary care provider. It does not have to be a specialist right out the gate, right? We don't have to see a neurologist or a memory specialist first thing. If you can get one, fantastic. But our primary care providers are really going to be our first line of defense in catching the changes in our memory and thinking skills. Now, technology. I usually get a side eye at that one from my older adults, and they're like, Morgan, I don't use technology. And so what I always say with my grandfather, who recently had a memory diagnosis, he has dementia, and my grandmother caught it because she noticed with the remote. Now, the remote did not change. It was the same remote that they had had for eons, and the cable network didn't change, same channels, everything. He was suddenly having trouble using the remote, right? He couldn't get the TV on. He couldn't remember where his favorite channels. And this is something that previously he did seamlessly, no problems, right? So you always want to think about where you are on a baseline level, where you are normally. Are there changes from where you were normally? You don't have to be a smartphone whiz. You don't have to know how to use the newest computers. But the technology that you were previously able to use, if you start to notice changes in your use of those things, that could be a challenge in technology that when we're talking about memory changes. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay, mild brain break, because I know that was a lot of information. Are there any questions about those things? Yes.
What were you saying about transportation?
Transportation.
Because I don't have a car anymore.
Yeah.
You're all happy about that.
So
But I ride the bus.
okay, great.
I don't mean just the van that
Right.
comes from here. I mean the number 27 or the number 9.
So it sounds like your use of transportation is great. So if you start to notice one day that like I can't remember my bus route, that before you were able to walk onto that bus, you knew your number, you knew your stop, but now you can't remember the stop. You're very disoriented when you're doing those things. That would be a challenge in transportation. With each of those things, we're looking at how you've previously used it and is there a change in how you use it before, or sorry, how you use it now. The name of the game is activities of daily living. Is my memory impacting my ability to function on a day-to-day basis? If you were having troubles getting on the bus and getting to where you're going, that's an impact in an activity that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, right? We're not looking necessarily at, can you drive a car? You decided, hey, I don't need to be driving a car anymore. That's great. A great choice to make. And you found an alternative. We want to make sure that you're still able to use your alternative form of transportation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anything? Cool. And Joe, please remind me of those, I think those 2 questions so that I can get your answers from some of our research team. Oh, yes.
I have 2 sisters.
Wait, Irma, wait. There you go.
2 of my sisters had Alzheimer's. What are my chances?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I mentioned genetics, right? Genetics do play a role in the development of the disease. Now, this doesn't guarantee, Miss Irma, that you're going to develop Alzheimer's disease-related dementia, but it increases the likelihood. If you have a family member, a direct link, like a parent or a sibling, like I said, it increases the chance. But there are a lot of things that can combat the chances of developing it. So when we talked about lifestyle, diet, exercise, cognitive activities, right? Those play a role in helping protect. Those are protective factors for you in the development of the disease. My grandmother was she's still alive, so is at an increased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease because she had 2 sisters that had the disease, right? So again, it doesn't guarantee that you'll develop it, but it just increases the likelihood and means that you might possess the gene that is related to the development of the disease. Anything? Cool. All right. So why does all this matter? Because there's a lot of information. There are more than 6 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease. I actually believe it's now more than 7 million. We've surpassed that marker, which breaks down to 1 in 9 adults over the age of 65. So you are very likely to know someone in your family, in your friend group, who is experiencing Alzheimer's disease related to dementia or even some other disease. This further breaks down into there are 11 million Americans providing care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease not only impacts the individual with the disease, but those that surround them. 66% of those individuals that are caring for a loved one are women, and 83% of caregiving is unpaid and provided by a family or friend, which actually totaled out to be about $18 billion in unpaid care. So I show all of this to say that caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease is hard work. A lot goes into it. It takes a village and impacts not only the individual with the disease, but like I mentioned, those that surround them. 1 in 3 older adults die with dementia caused by Alzheimer's disease or another disease. And Black and African Americans are twice as likely to develop the disease, but underrepresented in clinical research and clinical care. The same is true with Hispanic and Latino individuals. They are 1.5 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's disease, but are underrepresented in clinical research and clinical care when compared to their counterparts. So I say all that to say, there's a huge impact of the disease. And the more we talk about it, I've said it, the more agency we have and options we have for treating the disease. Yes?
Am I interpreting that left-hand panel correctly to say that 33% of deaths in older adults are caused by Alzheimer's disease?
Yes, that's correct. So next thing, who has heard of social and structural determinants of health before? Raise your hand, a couple people? Yeah. Well, I'm very excited for the few hands that are raised because this is one of my favorite things to talk about in the way that I love educating people on what this is. So social and structural determinants of health are life experiences that impact our health status, right? It's related to where people live, work, play, worship, right? Impact their overall health. So we've talked about there are things and factors that you can do that mitigate your chance of developing Alzheimer's disease. And a lot of this connects back to social and structural determinants of health. Individuals experience unique challenges based on these lifestyle factors and their life situations, their backgrounds that impact health outcomes as they age. So what does that look like? Even if you can't see it, don't worry, I'm gonna break it down for you. We're gonna talk about it. So there are 6 categories that we break down social and structural determinants of health into. Economic stability, neighborhood and physical environment, education, food, community and social context, and the healthcare system. Each of these things actually impact someone's health status, even if you don't think about it. So we see economic stability. How can economic stability impact someone's health status? We have employment, income, expenses, debt, medical bills, and support. But just thinking about economics, finances, how can that impact someone's health status? You can shout it out.
You wouldn't have access to medical
You wouldn't have access to medical care. Why?
because you wouldn't be able to pay for it because the government has changed their ACA.
You can't pay for it because the government has changed affordable care access for individuals. Yes.
You might not be able to afford medications,
Yep.
or you might use them suboptimally.
Absolutely. You can't afford your medications, so you're not taking them the way that you're supposed to, right? Any other thoughts? How can your finances or economics impact health status?
Not everybody has family support.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll get to that. Not everyone has the support of their family, which has a huge impact, especially as we age. With economics, I always talk about your employment impacts your insurance. Your insurance impacts the doctor that you see, which also impacts how much is your patient portion responsibility that you have to pay, right? It also impacts your retirement, right? It's like this interconnected web of finances that impact your health status without having anything to do with the actual medical care or medicine that you're receiving,
And
right?
overall, the stress of it all has an impact on your
Bingo. And the overall stress impact, which is when we're talking about your brain and healthy aging, the stress of these things on individuals. What about your neighborhood and physical environment? How does your neighborhood impact your health status?
Air quality.
Air quality, absolutely. Do I live near a factory that is spitting out pollutants, right? Especially in younger ages, right? Any other thoughts? How does your neighborhood impact?
Well, feeling safe is another stressor. If you
Feeling
don't feel
safe.
safe in your own environment,
Uh-huh.
then you are very stressed out.
Yep. If you don't feel safe, you feel stressed. And stress has a huge impact on the body. Anything else?
Well, if you're fearful, I mean, that's the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, if you're fearful, absolutely. As a child, did you have access to playgrounds to run around, exercise with, right? We
Yes.
talked about physical health. That doesn't start when you're an older adult, that starts when you're a child. Do you live in a community that has access to a grocery store that provides fresh fruits and vegetables, right? These are all things that impact your health status throughout the course of your life. Education. How does it impact your health status?
There's a lot of people here who have a lot of education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, if you don't know that smoking is bad for you, you might be smoking.
You might do it, right? Education is key to knowing, right? You can't hold people accountable for information that they don't know, right? You mentioned that individuals here have a lot of education. What about the individuals who don't have education, right? Who are unable to read. When you go to the doctor now, and a lot of times they hand you that, it's like the MyChart printout of the visit when you go, right? What if it's in a language that you can't read? Or what if you aren't able to read, right? You're given this information, you can't even access it. Early childhood education, what we know about education generally, individuals who experience higher levels of education throughout their lifetime show higher levels of cognition as well, right? Their brain is healthier overall. What about food? We talked about a little bit, access to food. Community and social context. This is what touches on stress, right? Or discrimination. Having a provider who understands your culture or your communities, right? The impacts that can have on your health status. And then, of course, the healthcare system, quality of care, right? Where are the providers located? Do I live in a community where I can access healthcare, or do I live in a more rural community, right? These are all things that when it boils down to impact stress levels, right? And what we know is that individuals who experience higher levels of stress over the course of their lifetime show decreased levels of cognition and are more likely to develop cognitive impairment, right? All of these things impact your mortality rate, life expectancy, healthcare expenditures, which is how much you're going to spend on it, your health status, and the functional limitations that you have, right? And these are all things that aren't necessarily, again, related to, that you might not think of being related to your health, but are. Any questions? So I have to leave you with some healthy brain aging tips, because you're probably like, well, Morgan, that was dark and bleak. So how do I keep my brain healthy with all of these things when I'm combating so many things in the world? How do I keep my brain healthy? Well, one thing that we talk about is mindfulness and meditation. How many of you are familiar with mindfulness and meditation? Ooh, yeah, I love that. So of course, these are things that ease your stress, because what we know is that stress is bad for the brain. We want to mitigate stress as much as possible. So we want to find ways to ground your mind and keep you present in the moment. Have any of you heard of the rainbow game? So this is my favorite de-stressor when I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I don't know what to do, right? You look around the room to find parts of the rainbow. So we go with Roy G. Biv: red, orange, yellow, green, blue.
Purple, brown, black.
Well, I was going to Biv, blue, indigo, violet, but you said purple, brown.
Purple, that's the order in which I put my egg.
Okay, we're going to go with Tama's rainbow because that's a new one. I don't usually do that one. So first, red. I'm going to go as fast as we can. Red, where's something red in the room?
On the slide.
Okay, we got red on the slide. Orange.
It's on the
On
slide.
the
It was, people pointed at things, they were different things. Okay, yellow.
yellow.
Yellow on the slide. Where are we? I know it is. Roy G. Green.
It's a green right here.
Okay. Tama, then we switch to yours. We're at green. Where do you go? Roy G.
Purple, brown, black.
Okay, purple. Purple.
On the slide,
Where?
right there.
Scarf.
Oh, okay, I'll give it to you. Purple, brown.
The guy.
Yeah, the guy. Black. Right? Black is next.
My
Cool.
feet.
How many of you were thinking about something stressful while you were doing that? How many of you were thinking about anything else other than identifying a color when you're doing that? Right? That's the point. You want to find things that take your mind off of whatever is stressful and ground you in the moment. Now, this is not a cure-all for the stress that you experience on a day-to-day basis, but it is something that you can do to minimize your stress. Now, mindfulness and meditation, there are sessions that are guided, but you can also do this alone. The Penn Memory Center has sessions online. We have it on our YouTube page. If you Google mindfulness and meditation, 1,000 things will pop up. So just managing your stress is the name of the game. Yes. Oh, okay, you have a teacher here. So engaging in that class, absolutely. We have a saying at the Memory Center that if it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain, right? Your brain and your heart are directly connected. If your heart is healthy, your brain is going to be healthy. How do you do that? One, you make a plan with your primary care provider. I think I've said that probably 10 times in this presentation. It is incredibly important to see a physician regularly. Wow, that was hard. Because those are the individuals, again, who are going to be your first line of defense. They're going to help you find who you need and what you need in your care. It doesn't necessarily have to be a memory specialist, in part because they're often hard to find, right? The availability can be challenging. So your primary care is your first line of defense. You want to maintain your heart health, and you're going to do that through diet and exercise, which a lot of times people don't like to hear. But diet and exercise are the main things that you're going to do. We recommend a heart-healthy diet. And so because we know if it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. Absolutely. So practicing those healthy eating habits, engaging in activities that are physically and cognitively stimulating, whatever that is, chair yoga, taking a walk, gardening. What are some of the things you guys do that keep you physically active?
Swimming.
Swimming, puzzles. Well, that's cognitively, but I love puzzles as well. Physical activities. And then we're going to switch to cognitive.
Go to the gym.
Tai Chi.
Going to the gym, Tai Chi. Someone else said that recently too, which is amazing, right? These are all things that keep us up and active. You don't have to go run the Broad Street Run, right? But we do want to make sure you're moving. And then cognition. Doing things that are cognitively stimulating is so, so, so important when we're talking about maintaining your health and combating all of the things that could cause Alzheimer's disease-related dementia. So cognition, what are some things that you guys do that keep you cognitive? Reading, yes.
Reading a lot.
Reading a lot, okay. Yeah, what else we got?
Learning a new language.
Woo! What language are you learning?
Spanish.
Spanish, I love it. Yes, beautiful, absolutely. Anything else? Yeah? Coming to events like these, right? Talking to your neighbors, talking to your friends, making phone calls. These are all things that keep your brain going. Playing an instrument. You want to avoid those sedentary activities. I often get, well, what about TV? You want to avoid sitting as much as possible. Someone always challenges me with Jeopardy. Absolutely. If you're watching Jeopardy and you're engaging with it, I love it. But moderation is the name of the game, right? We want to also make sure we're doing other things. By show of hands, who likes fish? Beautiful. I think the whole room raised their hand for that one. Oh, sorry. spoiled it. Chicken. Yeah. Beans. Beans is one that I hated as a kid, but I love now. Nuts and seeds. Okay. Yeah, Trader Joe's has like a massive nuts and seeds aisle of everything and you could think of and also that you couldn't think of. I saw dill pickled peanut once, which was a little wacky. It had a lot of salt though, so I don't recommend.
Is
Uh,
there a Trader Joe's in Philadelphia?
I don't know if there's one where there is one in Center. There are two in Center City. There's one in Ardmore as well. There's one up this way. I can't remember. I was at an event and I passed by it and I actually hopped in there. There is one out somewhere this way.
Montgomeryville?
Maybe that's where it was. Okay, yeah, that's what. Yeah.
There's one in Valley Forge.
Okay, Valley Forge isn't the one I was thinking of, but there is one. So I say that to say they have a huge nuts and seeds aisle. So does Whole Foods. And then fruits and veggies. One of the two. Yeah. Okay. I love that everyone raised their hand for at least something because these are the components to a heart healthy diet. Because we know that if it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. Absolutely. This is a diet, you may have heard the Mediterranean diet. We like to say heart healthy so that you can kind of create your own thing. It is high in fish, poultry, eggs, beans, nuts, seeds, fruits, veggies, healthy fats and oils, olive oil, avocado oil, things of that nature, right? These are things that we really want to prioritize when we're talking about keeping our brain healthy, and adds to that list of things that you can do. There are no vitamins or supplements that you can take that prevent Alzheimer's disease or dementia. How many of you have seen Prevagen or heard of it? Yeah. If you enjoy spending money and like shopping, absolutely go for it. Purchase it. Just don't take it. It is actually really bad for your heart. But there are so many vitamins and supplements out there on the market that market as will help you keep your memory. There isn't anything. Diet, exercise, cognitive stimulation. That's what you do. Now, if there is a particular vitamin that your doctor has recommended you take, a B12, a calcium, whatever it may be, right? Absolutely. Please do that. But don't fall into the ads. They are money grabs. They target older adults and really aren't helpful for you. And so if you're taking something and your doctor knows about it, you feel like it's helping, go for it. But as long as your doctor knows about it, that's the important part. And my last part. So clinical research I have to talk about because we are a clinical research center. We provide clinical research opportunities at the Memory Center. Most people, when they hear clinical research, they assume that it is you're receiving some sort of medication, right? There's also a lot of hesitancy, particularly from communities of color, Black and Brown communities, from engaging in clinical research because there's been a lot of mistrust and abuse of those communities in the clinical research space. And so we understand the hesitancy, right? But we've also done a lot of work to make sure that those communities are protected because we can't design we can't design treatments for those communities if they're not represented in clinical research. So diversity in research is really important. But there's also a multitude of ways that you can participate in clinical research. So one is going to be those observational treatment-based studies. So in our case, and really any case, these are studies where you're not receiving any sort of drug treatment or medication. We're really observing how your brain changes over time. How do we do this? Blood work, MRIs, PET scans are different forms of which we use, but no medication is being received or given. And then, of course, we have treatment-based studies, which are incredibly important still. You asked about infusions earlier. This is where it comes into play. This is when researchers are providing some sort of medical treatment to you, providing some sort of drug to see how it will interact with the particular disease. So why do people I'm stumbling over my words, my goodness. Why do people participate? I mentioned this earlier. first thing for themselves, right? Some people might want to do it for themselves. They might have the disease. They might know someone who had the disease, and they are internally motivated to participate. Maybe they do it for support, right? Access to resources, access to a community that is familiar with this particular disease. For the future of their community, because research can be a slow-moving machine, unfortunately. It's not something that happens quickly. And so while they might not benefit from their participation, their community will, right? And then for inclusivity and representation. Research can't be designed for our communities if we're not represented in our communities, or in our research, excuse me. There's an example a few years back. A drug was approved for Alzheimer's disease treatment and put on the market. And shortly after, they released the study cohorts information, and there was almost no representation for communities of color. And what they started to see is that the drug wasn't working when used for the treatment of individuals of Black and Brown communities. And, had those people been represented, maybe the outcome would have been different. And so it's really important for the design of treatments for people of color to also participate. And there have been a lot of safeguards now in place, not just for those communities, but for all individuals who participate, to protect them when they're participating in research. Real quick, medical imaging. How many of you had an MRI before? Okay. How many of you had a PET scan before? Fewer. Okay. So everyone in this room has had some sort of imaging. This is what we use now for the identification, to assist with the identification of Alzheimer's disease-related dementia. MRIs are that big round tube. It makes so much noise, but magnetic resonance imaging. This machine creates a picture using magnetic fields of your body. And then PET scans, which is positron emission tomography. It's an imaging test that reveals how your organs and tissues are functioning. So they're similar but different. They use different things, and how they identify them and what they identify is different. Yes.
My husband and I are in the aging brain cohort.
Yeah, ABC.
Study.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the ABC study. And we had MRIs done
Yes.
once.
Yes.
Are they repeated in
Yeah,
that?
so you'll repeat them again down the line.
Okay.
They'll have you come back and you'll repeat them. And the reason why is, those ABC, so Andrea is a part of an observational trial. So we're trying to study how your brain changes over time. So you'll come back, you'll repeat those MRIs so that our clinicians can compare them and see how is your brain changing over the course of your life. Yes.
And if we're developing Alzheimer's disease, they'll see the changes
Yes,
in the MRIs?
so they would see it. Now, the thing with clinical research is it's not clinical care. So if we see that there's a change that you should see a clinician for, we would then schedule you a visit to come in to our clinic to evaluate you for further things. So we wouldn't identify something and then be like, oh, well, I don't know, something looks a little suspicious, and then, lead you in the dark. We would point you to care so that we can, work on treatment and talk about those things.
And also as part of that, we do those cognitive function tests every
Yes.
year.
Mhm.
And my understanding is if they see changes, they'll advise us that there were,
Yes.
like there was decline noted or
Yep.
whatever it is.
So we do what's called return of results with the aging brain cohort. So you actually, when you're participating in all of the MRIs, the PET scans, the cognitive assessments, we give you your results. We tell you about what we found. Again, because we don't want you living in the dark, essentially. We want you to be aware of what's happening with your brain. Now, there are some studies that we're not able to do that sort of thing for. That's more so for some of the treatment-based studies. They're often called blind studies where we can't tell you what you've received, but it really just depends on the study. Any other questions about imaging? I know I did that really fast. Yeah.
What's the difference between a PET scan and a CAT scan?
So a PET scan and a CAT, I believe a CAT scan is actually similar to an MRI, but I need to double check that because I'm not entirely sure. It's so like a CAT scan is really what a CT scan is, which is very similar to an MRI, but gives you information about the image of your body. Cool. Any other questions? Has anyone worked in the medical field before? Yeah. Cool. All right. Do we have anyone who can answer the CAT scan question? Okay.
I can't really answer it, but I'll tell you what I thought it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty
I thought the MRI uses
Yes.
magnetic images, whereas the CAT scan is more similar to X-rays.
Yeah.
But they're done very quickly
Right.
and they're integrated using computers.
Yeah. CAT scan is much faster than an MRI is. Cool. Thank you so much, Joe. All right, so last thing, this is Julius Hayes. He is a research participant at the Penn Memory Center. He is a retired SEPTA employee, Philadelphia native, and something he said is, yeah, and a Phillies fan, yes. So he said he joined research because one of his friends was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and he wanted to give back in whatever way he could. And he says participating is kind of like a social thing that he feels like he has to do to help in a small way. So we were talking about, well, why wouldn't someone, or why would someone? There are a lot of different reasons. Julius's reason is he knows someone that is close to him that developed the disease, but there can be a lot of different reasons that motivate individuals. If you are interested in participating in research or getting involved in any of our social programs, if you have any questions, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Have any questions? This is our website, pennmemorycenter.org/research is where you'll see all of our research studies listed. We don't usually have a paper handout because they're constantly changing. We're constantly getting new ones. And then if you're interested in joining our research registry, you can do it online. I also have a paper form that if you're like, hey, Morgan, I really want to do this, that I can give to you and get you signed up.
What is a registry?
So a registry is a database that we have that houses individuals who are interested in research. So our research coordinators from time to time will go into the registry and search. Maybe they're looking for white females over the age of 60. And then they can start contacting those individuals to let them know that we have a study that you might be interested in. And so it just kind of houses people who like, hey, I would like to do research if you find something that I fit. Any last thoughts and questions? Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. Again, I have handouts up here.
Yes.
This is
thank
my
you.
contact info. Thank you. You guys were fantastic. And then Joe, do you remember your two questions? Because now I'm blanking on them, which is so funny because
Is this a test?
is this a test?
That's why I asked you those questions. because
I
knew
know.
you'd forget
I
them.
just failed I failed. But I would love to connect to get you that information for those questions that you had. And then,
Is this information
Yes.
there on
yes,
some of those papers there?
it is kind of. Some of it is on this one. So on the back, it does have our website and then the contact information for their number, like the center's number. If you call this number and ask for me, they will get you to me. But it doesn't have my direct line. I'm also happy to quickly write my number on these papers if you would like that instead. Yeah, I can do that real quick. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Yeah,
for doing that. That was really great.
anytime.